Come join me. We're going to talk about what breaks between 30 million and 70 million in ARR. And this one's important because I feel like so many companies start to think about, hey, I can't scale past 10 million or I want to get past 100 million. But I feel like nobody really talks about the messy middle. So I'm going to give you the secrets here and I want you to take a peek at your own business and see how they might apply to what you might be dealing with today. So here's the truth about $10 million companies. They can brute force growth. I'm going to let that land for a minute. They can brute force growth. What I mean by that is you can still have a really scrappy founder who's underneath the hood in a lot of things. And together with the right executive operations team, they can make a lot of things work at once. You've got scrappy marketing, founder-led sales. It's messy, sure, but it moves. Unfortunately, once you start hitting $30 million, that all breaks because scrappy no longer is enough for you. And so somewhere between that 30 million and that 70 million, the system that you built to get there, it no longer works and functions. And you don't see it break all at once. In fact, I think that's actually the challenge. It starts to break little by little. And if you're not looking at those mile markers and you aren't sure what to be looking for, you might end up in a situation where it's too late and you're trying to bring on people to solve problems that are systems issues, not people issues. And I think that that's important because when you send someone out looking for a person, you're tending to look for specific things when all along it might just be that the system itself is broken and what worked before didn't work now. And so even if you bring in a person, if they don't have exact experience building those systems, you're actually still going to end up unhappy because it's not a personnel problem, it's a system issue. So again, I think that's where you start to see growth slow down and decisions take longer. And so I want to talk about what's actually breaking at this point. And it's really that founder intuition. So a founder's intuition can only get you so far. I know this as a founder myself. I have weaknesses, we all do. And we also all have different types of intelligences and things that the business was built around that really speak to our strength as founders. So at some point though, unfortunately, that intuition stops scaling. This is where the anxiety creeps in, true. As a founder, you feel a little bit worried. You're not sure how everything is running and you're not sure how everything is coming together. And so again, that's why the systems are so important and why you want to put them in place between the 10 and $30 million stage so you don't get to that 30 to $70 million stage and feel stuck. Because here you can't gut check every decision and the business no longer fits in your head. Everybody else has to be built along with you. The team is multiplied. You've now got layers, you've got marketing, you've got sales, you've got rev ops, you've got product. You simply can't be everywhere at one time, and it's not going to be your job any longer to integrate those. So what used to take a conversation in the past now is going to be taking meetings and other meetings and follow-ups, and that's where speed dies. And I see a lot of founders get flustered and frustrated because they just can't understand why what used to work no longer does. And we're talking about extremely intelligent people here. Founders tend to be geniuses. They know what they want. They're type A, and they just get frustrated at this point because they had a system that worked and now it doesn't. So I want you to understand why the speed is dying, and then we're going to talk about how you actually fix it. So at this point, what you can be looking for, the mile markers, your forecast, your gaps are going to start widening. So it might have been, hey, we were really close to hitting forecast before, but now it's been a couple quarters since we've hit forecast, or frankly, we haven't had some deals in a while. Your conversion is starting to look inconsistent. Your deals are slipping. Your confidence as a founder and the confidence of your team is starting to drop, and it seems like nobody can explain why. Those are the mile markers to be looking for that say, oh, we've probably reached a point where we need to stop. We need to detail out the system. We need to fully build that out as a growth layer. We'll talk about that. I know we talk about that in general a lot on this channel, but we need to build that growth layer, aligning marketing and sales and product and finance and CX all together so that everybody understands what good looks like when it comes to the go-to-market motion. And it's no longer me as the founder taking everything from my brain and trying to be across all of those places and make sure that I'm communicating between each of those parties. Again, that doesn't work anymore once you hit 30 million. Because at this point, you start getting a lot of opinions, a lot of territory and ownership, and all of these silos that have been built between marketing, sales, product, CX, and finance now have led to a place where decisions are not just about what's right, they're about who's right. And the way that you break through that and create that continuity and scale those systems is really important. And so let's talk about that. Here at this stage, growth friction is no longer tactical, it's actually architectural. And that's what I mean by a growth layer. I truly mean building a system of communication amongst those people so that, again, as the founder and CEO, you are not responsible for their thoughts and their feelings. Instead, you're able to focus on running the business and where the future of the company is going through. And the operational components, the systematized components of growth, now can fully function underneath you, and you sit atop that, right? So this is not a campaign problem. It's not a channel problem. And if you're trying to solve it with marketing or with sales, you're going to fail. So that's why I want to call it out, because it's bigger than that. You've got to make sure that you're looking at how the growth decisions are happening and that you're evolving that with the company. I'm going to give you an example so you can see how this actually plays out. So a couple years back, I worked with a company who was several $100 million and 40-year plus as an organization. So clearly they had experience, clearly they knew what they were doing, and they were doing some things right. However, every single month we would get to a space where we would meet with a CEO, and all of a sudden sales and marketing were at each other's throats trying to decide what attribution was correct and what numbers to share with the CEO. And this for a company that was $500 million in sales and owned by an incredibly large and very well-known VC company. That just doesn't make sense. It was this exact situation. A growth layer was not in place, and they had not identified those key systems to make sure that attribution and everything else in terms of the pipeline was clearly articulated. They had a pipeline visibility issue that was just a reflection of the fact that they didn't have that growth layer. They had good people, they had a budget, they had a product, but the growth was extremely heavy and unpredictable, as well as how it was communicated to the CEO, who was just annoyed and flustered and frustrated because he couldn't understand why people couldn't communicate that issue. So it's exactly the same issue we're talking about, but usually it hits a lot earlier, like I was talking about, between 30 and 70 million. In this case, this company was hitting it again at a larger inflection point, which can happen. So if you have a larger business, don't feel like these things don't apply to you. They still very well may, especially if the organization is a little more dated in how they've been running things. And that was the case with this company. They had done things for a really long time because it had worked before. So the reframe here is that you need something that is a layer that owns growth end to end. Marketing owns demand and sales owns conversion, but you need something that has a system that's connecting all of them. And that's the fork in the road. So between 30 and 70 million, you either need to install that true growth decision layer, or you're going to stall out. And it's not for a lack of talent. So before you just cut all the people from your vine and are worried that that's the problem, it's the structure that's actually missing. And that's the piece that as a CEO can feel really scary and overwhelming in terms of how to build that and how you create that. That's something we help with all the time. So if you ever have questions, you have thoughts, or you really want to just kind of sit down with somebody and talk a little bit deeper about what good looks like there, let me know. We're always happy to help. That's Growth Actually. Have a great day.